Well, Rings of Power is slipping. I've gone from like skeptic to this is actually really good in the first couple episodes, which I really enjoyed. To last week thinking, something is really not clicking for me with this episode. Writing feels off. Galadriel's getting on my nerves. Plot doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Excuse me. And then tonight we got episode 4, The Great Wave, and I am just having a really hard time watching this show and not either being bored to death or just so apathetic when it comes to pretty much all the characters that it's just hard to be invested in what's going on. We have this way that the show is sort of pushing forward big, huge plot points. Like Galadriel has gone from the frozen north to Lindon, halfway to Valinor, down to Numenor, and now is basically rallied the Numenorians to go to the Southlands to go fight Sauron's orcs, and I guess put Halbrand back on the throne of the Southlands. Can you be the king of someplace called the Southlands? Don't we have names for kingdoms like Numenor? Can you be the king of Numenor, or the king of Gondor, or the High King of Lindon, or the king of the Southlands? Anyways, Galadriel's just globe-trotted the crap out of this show, going from one big thing to the next, and meanwhile, like, Nori and the Harfoots have moved 80 feet across a plain, like, and Arondir, we'll get to, okay, let's just go from one group to the next real quick. Galadriel, has gone into Numenor and has basically argued a bunch with the Numenorians, with Mithril and Pharazôn and all these different characters there, and nobody likes her because she's super unlikable, and she actually gets locked up in this episode for sedition, apparently. I don't know if you can actually commit sedition if you're not a citizen of the city, but anyway, she gets locked up because she's being so stubborn and hard to work with. She has no diplomacy whatsoever. Halbrand thinks this is funny, and he compares her to a horse. So now in last episode, she was compared to Elendil's children, and this episode, she's compared to a horse. This is another reason why I don't think she's a Mary Sue. People just generally don't seem to like her very much. She's not very good at the basics of things like diplomacy or statecraft or any of the things you'd expect from a very old, very elder elf. And it's kind of funny when these men who are like a fraction of her age are talking down to her. Like, can't you write a character that's better than this, people? I mean, come on. Like, this is not a strong female protagonist in any way. She's kind of an idiot. She has a hard time getting what she wants because she has no social skills, and it's just then so she gets locked up, and eventually they're going to take her to a ship to deliver her back to the elves, which is what she wanted in the first place. And so Pharazôn shows up with some guards, and she it's the worst little fight scene you've ever watched. She like grabs the guards, and they're all big and in armor, and she kind of grabs them and throws them into the cell. And then he's going to draw his sword, and Halbrand's like, don't do that. I wouldn't do that. She's going to kick your butt. And I'll tell you where she's going because, Halbrand can't be trusted, obviously. So then she goes, she wants to talk to the old king who's been deposed because he likes elves. The elf hate in Numenor is super weird and really off-putting. Let me get to that in a second, though. So she goes, and he's bedridden, and then Muriel's like, nope, there's a bunch of guards here. You can't push them all into a cage. We're shipping you back to the elves. No buts about it. The whole elf hate thing is very strange. See, in the story, in Tolkien's story, eventually Sauron is captured and brought to Numenor and corrupts the people of Numenor, especially the leaders. And then there's this divide between sort of the faithful and then these corrupted, evil, human-sacrificing sons of bitches, right? And that leads to the fall of Numenor. But here, there's just all this elf hate, and it's not very well explained. I imagine that none of the people alive on this island have really even ever met an elf. Like, they live on an island, like, way far away from the elves. And though they have very long lifespans because they are, these special people of Numenor, granted this island and long lifespans by the Valar, but despite that, they still wouldn't have really had much contact with elves, or at least that's the way it's portrayed in the show. So I don't really understand the hate. It doesn't really work, and it's sort of like this could work later on when Sauron arrives, but right now it just feels weird. It's like they're jumping the gun. Anyways, so Galadriel gets what she wanted, what she had originally wanted, which was to get shipped back, but she doesn't want anymore because now she wants the Numenorians to go fight the orcs in the Southlands. I don't know why she's not going back to get the elven armies to fight in the Southlands and thinks that the Numenorians have to do it, but that's where the show's going. And when she leaves, the petals from the great tree of Numenor start to fall, and we get a little voiceover talking about how that's, a sign that they're making the wrong choice. And so she brings back Galadriel, and she's like, actually, never mind, people. The wind blew the petals off the tree, and now we're gonna get a fleet together and go to the Southlands and see what's up. Who wants to join me? And everyone's like, yeah, we want to join now. It's very bad. It's just very bad. In the Southlands, you've got Arondir, who's been captured, right? Tried to escape, got recaptured. And now this guy, Adar, shows up. Darth Adar. He looks to be a dark elf, basically, like a bad elf, an evil elf, which is a cool concept. One that's not really explored much in the Lord of the Rings proper, but makes sense. There's been the fallen angels, basically. They become Balrogs. There's Sauron himself. There's lots of different fallen characters, right? Fallen and turned to the dark side, turned to Morgoth and evil and all that. So it makes sense to have this character. I don't mind them making up new characters. Actually, I think the made up characters are the best so far. Like Arondir and Nori and some of these other totally not fictional, but totally non-canon characters are some of the best. Anyways, he was a pretty cool bad guy, like up until he let Arondir go. He's like, you bring a message to the humans for me that have like hidden out. And I'm thinking, wait, you're letting this elven soldier, who's probably the better fighter and more deadly and dangerous than any of the humans back there, you're just letting him go and he's allowed to take his bow and arrows and shit. It's a really strange decision for a bad guy to make. It seems like a really convenient plot shortcut that the writers have taken. Instead of having Arondir escape in some interesting way, he's just freed. Which is good because he shows up right in the nick of time to save Theo, who's back at this village getting chased and hunted by orcs who are looking for that Morgul blade hilt that he has. So he shows up right in time, and they run off, and the orcs are chasing him through the woods, and then Bronwyn shows up, and they're all getting shot at, but Arondir does some cool elf acrobatics where he catches the arrows and fires them back. I love the orcs in this show. The orcs look great. That whole scene is actually kind of fun when the orcs are chasing them through the woods, although it did remind me of the scene in Wheel of Time when they're being chased by the Trollocs. Although this looks better. This is filmed better. The special effects are better, but it's a similar scene running through the forest, It's just Robin Hood and Little John running through the forest. So anyways, they get away, and he brings his message to the people at the tower where everyone's hiding out, and then the old man from the village is talks to Theo, and it's like he's a dark friend. If we're going to just go back to the whole Wheel of Time thing, he's basically he's an evil human. He's waiting for Sauron to come back, and he's got the mark of the Morgul blade too, because you stick it in your arm and the blood comes out and it does its fiery thing. Getting some weirdly Wheel of Time vibes from this, which is kind of funny because obviously Robert Jordan took a lot from Tolkien, and then now it feels like these fanfic writers for this are taking stuff from Wheel of Time. There's an interesting theory I'll talk about more in another video about how this was actually maybe a Dragon Age show originally, and then it got retooled to be this Tolkien show or Lord of the Rings show, Middle Earth show. Anyways, then we have Elrond, who has some conversation with Celebrimbor, and then goes and meets up with Durin, and Durin is trying to hide the Mithril from him, and he reads their lips, and he can tell there's a secret, so he goes and he digs around some, and he finds Durin, and Durin's pissed, but he's like, look, I'm just snooping around because I'm your homie. And then Durin's like, oh, okay, well, here, let me show you this, and he shows him the Mithril, and then, elves love Mithril, that's the whole thing, and Elrond's clearly like, whoa, cool. That's what Marcellus Wallace's soul is. It's made out of mithril. But this is again, this is one of those weird canon changes that I just don't really understand. Like Eregion was founded by the elves because the dwarves at Khazad-dûm found mithril. They built that city there because of mithril. It's like you build a city near the natural resource that you want. That's the whole reason, is the proximity to mithril. But here, of course, Eregion is already formed. There's already the smiths there and Celebrimbor there and everything. And mithril's just been discovered. Now, Durin says that the reason he's keeping it a secret is because it's dangerous to mine for it. But that doesn't really make sense, because why would Elrond give a shit if it was dangerous to mine for it? Then they illustrate the danger by having a cave-in, and some dwarves are almost killed, and this is a really big deal, even though I assume in a mining culture like dwarven culture, there would be cave-ins and accidents and mishaps, even with skilled artisans like the dwarves. Occasionally you're going to have accidents and problems. The real problem with mithril is that they dig so deep that they come across the Balrog 2,000 years into the Third Age. So we've already seen Balrogs in the trailers, so we know that a Balrog's coming. You can extrapolate from this that eventually they will dig down too deep in this show and awaken the Balrog. That's not supposed to wake up for at least 2,000 more years, but we're now not only condensing the Second Age, but bringing in things from the middle of the Third Age. So the timeline is just so mind-bogglingly condensed at this point. You cannot make heads or tails of it anymore. I know I said I was going to watch this as fan fiction and not worry too much about these things, but you do have to wonder at what point would it have just made more sense to create their own story that wasn't Middle Earth, that wasn't held back by Middle Earth, that was just an original story with spend $1 billion on it. Actually, you could save $250 million on the rights and just put all that into writing a fucking script. I mean, imagine putting the kind of love and care and resources, hiring the best fucking writers you could find who would write a really good story with compelling characters, and then dress it all up with all these pretty special effects and costumes and, soundtrack and all that. So there were no Harfoots in this episode, no stranger. Disa sang, and man, she's got a great voice. Disa's one of my favorite characters. Arondir, Disa, Nori. Honestly, the diversity in this is, it is odd. It's odd at times to see Numenor is this, the most rainbow coalition. It's just every skin color you can imagine. It's it's different seeing Middle Earth not be as white as the Peter Jackson movies were, and it's based on a British lore and Norse lore and all that. But honestly, a lot of the more diverse characters have been my favorite. Arondir feels the most elvish to me. Disa is one of the most entertaining and likable characters in the show. I like Elrond too. But the worst characters I think are Galadriel. It's just not good at all. Mostly I just find I don't like any of the characters enough to care that much. Right now in this episode, I'm just I'm watching it and I'm bored. I'm not even that annoyed. I'm just kind of bored. I'm I really can't, why do I care at all about Elendil or Isildur or Elendil or Isildur? Oh, I cannot speak right now. That whole, all the Numenorians are just awful. I don't like any of them. They're either boring and flat or they're just unpleasant. They're just angry at the elves for some fucking reason. And also, why is everybody arguing all the time in this show? There's a whole scene where Isildur and a couple of his buddies get kicked off a boat because he purposely screws something up because he doesn't want to be a sailor. But in the last episode, he was in a big argument with his dad about it. Because apparently in this show, everyone's arguing all the time. And so then his friends are really mad at him and they're like, "Oh, Isildur, you're always doing this shit. I'm so sick of you and your bullshit." And he's like, "God, guys, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." And it's who are these people? Why do we care about them? They have done literally nothing to make me care about a single Numenorian character. At one point, Muriel has a vision of a great wave going crashing over the whole city, and I was hopeful that they were actually just going to sink it right then and there and spare us all these dreadful characters. Really boring, dull, flat, and uninteresting characters. they've invented a sister for Isildur, and they have not made her interesting either. There's just nothing there. No substance, no character development, nothing to care about or latch onto. And I'm not saying that I don't care about any of these characters. I just am having more and more trouble understanding why I should. So that is my review of episode 4 of The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power on Amazon Prime. As you can tell, I've gone from being a startled fan, surprised that I liked the show so much, to being so disappointed. I'm still going to watch. I'm going to give it a fair shake. I've given it a fair shake every single episode, and I'm just finding myself bored. My mind is wandering while I watch it. The special effects are nice. The music, especially in that scene with the orcs chasing Arondir and Bronwyn, very nice music. Bear McCreary's great. But the story's not that. Just not that. It's not that. It's not for me. I need character-driven stories. I don't need people just to bicker and argue all the time. I want this to feel like a Tolkien story where people have friendships and affection for one another and are heroic and not just angry. Like Galadriel's... Anyways, all right, more on that later. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, yada, yada, yada. Peace.